Well, thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. We've had some exciting developments over the past couple of months and wanted to touch base with the commission to make sure that you're all aware of all the exciting stuff that's happening. We wanted to start with a quick round of introductions.
I'm Peter Goodspeed. I'm the Restoration Program Director with the Wetlands Initiative.
Victoria Wittick, I'm the Illinois-Indiana Conservation Manager for Audubon Great Lakes.
I'm Craig Zanstra, the Superintendent of Planning and Natural Resources for Lake County Parks.
Okay, so before we jump into the details, just wanted to give you sort of a lay of the land of what we're going to talk about. And to the end's point, we're going to try to go through this really quickly. So we're trying to hit about 10 minutes, so we'll go quick. But we're going to walk through the vision, our partnership, and then the phases of work that we're undertaking. There's 3 of them: restoration, planning, and implementation. Then we're going to walk through some opportunities and challenges and leave off with some investments and funding request updates. And so let's start with the vision. Paul Botts, the Executive Director of the Wetlands Initiative, has estimated that once complete, the 2,000 acres of wetlands restored on this 10-mile stretch of the West Branch of Little Calumet River will arguably be one of the largest urban wetland restorations in American history. If we're just thinking about the Chase Street Complex and Marshalltown Marsh Complex, plus all the others, that's more than twice the size of New York City's Central Park for our region's residents. And so this vision, I think, is really critical for our partnership. It inspires us every day. It pushes us forward. And we're undertaking this ambitious work together because we really do believe in this vision. And so with regard to the partnership, birds of a feather flock together. We are represented by a range of organizations with a variety of skills, expertise, and resources. The Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission is, of course, one of the most critical partners in the collaboration. We're also represented by Audubon Great Lakes, the Wetlands Initiative, Lake County Parks and Recreation, along with the City of Gary, NIPSCO, the Nature Conservancy, and the Calumet Collaborative. And we have been active since about 2019. I know we've got some new folks in the room, so we just wanted to make sure you had the full history. We've been active since about 2019 on collaborative planning, fundraising, and management to realize that vision. We're trying to restore healthy, functional, and publicly accessible green spaces within the river levee system for the benefit of all the region's residents, all of our wildlife, and within that capacity, enhancing as much as we can the charge of the commission, which is flood protection. So in terms of the phases of work, there are 3. There's the restoration phase, the planning phase, and the implementation phase. And we're going to walk you through each of these phases in sequence. So when we're talking about restoration, we're specifically referencing 4 sites. There's 3 shown on the slide, 4 sites on the corridor. When we're talking about planning, we're talking about really large wetland complexes. There's 2. There's the Marshalltown Marsh Complex, which is 400 acres, and there's the Chase Street Complex, which is in the beating heart of the river corridor, right in the center there, 800 acres. And then in the implementation phase, once we get beyond that planning, we've got a sample here of some of the types of projects that we would be aggressively fundraising for. The implementation phase is where the price tag starts to really skyrocket. And we've got a lot of ideas in mind about how we are going to hit those targets and get those implementation projects implemented in a phased approach. And I'm going to hand it over to Peter now to walk through the restoration phase.
All right, thank you, Victoria. So in discussing the restoration phase of this work, the on-the-ground work to date has involved restoring 3 sites: Highland Rookery, Grant Street Wetland, MLK South Wetland, and we've recently taken on the management of the Black Oak mitigation area. And these sites are circled in red on the corridor map and total about 483 acres. Federal grant awards, private donations, and generous contributions by the Basin Commission has supported this work since 2019, and it has included the day-to-day restoration work of the Lake County Parks crew within the river corridor, contract invasive species control, native plant installation, water control structure installation at Highland Rookery and MLK South Wetland, and project management support. This work takes a while, and in thinking in particular about like the control of invasive Phragmites, the rhizomes actually stay viable in the soil for up to 5 years. So that being said, we need at least 5 years of treatment to really see the change in these areas. That all being said, we really are starting to see the fruits of our labor. There is a noticeable decrease in invasive plant cover. Sandhill cranes, trumpeter swans, and other marsh birds are utilizing these sites once again. And we are seeing more and more patches of native plant communities crop up from the seed bank and in areas where we've installed native plant material. Our partnership is also taking a closer look at the changes in the plant communities through quantitative vegetation monitoring. Shifting gears a little bit, we'd like to now discuss the planning phase for some of our more large-scale complex projects. On this corridor map, again, we can see our big projects circled in red that include the Chase Street Complex and Marshalltown Marsh Complex. And I'll hand it back to Victoria to talk a little bit about Marshalltown Marsh.
Thank you, Peter. And the reason why he's passing that back is in our partnership, we all take on a variety of roles. And when it comes to the Marshalltown Marsh project, the Audubon Great Lakes team is leading the fundraising and management for this part of the project. And then TWI is taking the lead for the partnership on the Chase Street project. So that's why we're flipping and flopping here. What you're looking at is the 60% design, which was completed at the end of 2024. This showcases what was once a concept and now is a 60% complete plan, right? We are now fundraising to take it to 100%, but it's very inspiring and encouraging to think about what the possibilities might be. For example, on this slide, you might notice, I don't know if I can use the pointer. Over here, you guys might refer to this as the MLK North wetland as part of the Marshalltown Marsh Complex. Over here's the wedge. There's also some public parks nearby, Ironwood Park, Peppermint Playground is in here. And then we have our historic Hatcher Park, which we view as the gateway into the entirety of the West Branch corridor. And within the 60% design plan, you'll see a couple of features. Over here in the MLK North wetland, this is where that culvert is currently being considered. The permit's under review by City of Gary. There's an opportunity to do river remeandering, which slows the water down, allows the vegetation to absorb it, and provide those natural ecosystem benefits. A little bit of flood enhancement, right, or protection enhancement. When we move into the larger complex, there's a lot of opportunities to install a variety of different wetland habitat. And at Audubon Great Lakes, we believe anything that's good for the birds is good for everything else. And so the more diverse wetland habitat we can create for the more diverse bird species will have a cascading beneficial effect on everything else. Now, as we move into the next phase, it's the final design. So we're the concept to 60% design. Now we want to do final design and permitting. To date, Audubon and partners in the collaborative have submitted 3 grant applications to fund this work. The most recent was submitted at the end of June, and we will hear back this fall on whether or not we are awarded. If so, our start date would be January 1st, 2027. The project would last through December 31st, 2028. And within this particular funding pipeline, they have implementation dollars available. So if we're successful with this grant, we're in the chute to apply for implementation dollars, which we would endeavor to do in the middle of 2028 to set us up for implementation at the beginning of 2029. So as I mentioned, planning is going to take a minute. It's going to be about 2 years. We're anticipating river remeandering, wetland restoration, concept design, public access, amenity design, thinking about fishing piers, thinking about bird observation decks, walking trails. And also, this is something I'm very excited about, we're incorporating matching leveraged funding from when we receive funding from the commission or federal grants, that helps us leverage foundation dollars. And we're going to be seeking about $175,000 to do an urban park master plan for Hatcher Park, which will dovetail into all the access amenities at Marshalltown Marsh. I'm talking too much about this. It's so exciting and I would love to talk to you more. But we also have a lot of community engagement built into this process. Audubon Great Lakes has a wild indigo nature discovery program, and we're hiring a new associate this year, and we are looking for candidates from the city of Gary. So I'll be reaching out to the commission in case you have any recommendations. And in the big picture, achieving that ambitious vision, largest urban wetland restoration in American history. Well, we also have to establish our long-term maintenance plans and long-term stewardship plans. So the final design phase is going to incorporate that aspect so that we're set up for success before we even start implementation. After the planning phase is the implementation phase. At the 60% design, the estimate was 18 million for all of the project components with a 4 to 8 year timeline for completion. And so it's a lot. We have a lot of aggressive fundraising strategies in mind, but we wanted to be fully transparent and touching base with you today about the phases of this work so that there are no surprises moving forward. And then with that, I'm going to hand it to Peter to talk about the Chase Street complex.
All right, so talking a little bit about one of our other, larger complex projects, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Chase Street. I know some of you have been out to visit the Chase Street complex in person, but for those of you who haven't, here is a concept map that illustrates sort of like our master plan for the site. And this project is also ambitious as it involves realigning a section of the Little Cal with its historic channel, restoring adjacent floodplain marshes and other associated habitats throughout the site, installing public access point and amenities throughout the 800-acre site to make it more of a community asset. And I really love how this map sort of like highlights all the possibilities between restoring this rich mosaic of different habitat types, including the floodplain marshes, wet meadow, floodplain forest, in addition to some of the possibilities for public access amenities, including viewing platforms, fishing pier, canoe and kayak launches, and those will complement existing parking areas. We have the pedestrian bridge over the existing Little Calumet channel. Furthermore, thinking a little bit about the flood mitigation benefits of this project, this won't necessarily increase flood storage capacity within the Chase Street area, but by realigning the river with its historic channel and adding an additional culvert going under Chase Street, this project has the potential to add conveyance of water through the site that will sort of facilitate the flow from west to east and help the site drain more quickly. So I always compare this to, or say that, we're not increasing the size of the bathtub, but we're adding another drain to that bathtub when we think about how water moves through the site. So with a recent National Coastal Resilience Fund grant, we recently completed 60% engineering and design plans for the site at the end of last year. We've actually received another NCRIF grant to complete final engineering and design and permitting for the project over the next 2 years. And we are currently waiting on bids for this next phase of design work. Really exciting. This next phase of work will also include more designs for public access and amenities throughout the site. Additionally, we've assembled a community advisory board in the first phase of work to help inform the design process. And they will also be involved in this next phase of work. And importantly, as Victoria also mentioned with Marshalltown Marsh, this final engineering and design phase will give us a more accurate cost estimate for the project and will identify ways in which we can phase the construction over a period of time. The preliminary cost opinion puts this entire project at about $22 million. But again, we're going to identify potential funding sources and ways to phase the work over a period of time. And this summarizes some of the potential funders for work like this. Again, we've had great success in securing large federal grants from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We're pursuing funding from NOAA fisheries grants in addition to other private foundations.
And I should also say that we have received funding through NOAA for the 60% design, which was completed by the Coastal States Organization. And in fact, one of our newest commissioners, Jenny Orsburn, helped facilitate that process.
So highlighting some opportunities with this work that we're doing, community engagement has always been a central component of this work, and will continue to seek out community input and guidance in the restoration and public access development of these sites. And for implementation and long-term stewardship, we will prioritize local workforce development. Thinking about the challenges, of course, I'm sure you're all aware that securing long-term multi-year funding is a challenge, especially in making sure there are no gaps in this work. And given the big ticket construction projects, we'll have to phase the work appropriately and continue to fundraise for this work. So I really love this figure. This is a very powerful graphic because it shows that a total of over $3.3 million has been invested in this work within the corridor today. Yeah, they're not seeing that. Since 2019, the Basin Commission has generously supported this work with over $1 million in awards, and we've leveraged these awards in securing additional federal grants and funding from private donors by a ratio of more than 2 to 1. So we see a significant multiplier effect here, and so for every dollar invested by the Basin Commission in this work, we've been able to secure, I think the exact amount is $2.23. And we'll continue to track this ratio, and we hope to make this ratio even bigger, especially as we get into some of the more big ticket construction projects. This table summarizes the Basin Commission's current commitment for 2026 for restoration, and we've attempted to project out what we will likely be requesting for restoration in the next 2 years. And this table is also found in the document that I presented you before this meeting. We know you all don't like to make multi-year funding commitments, but for the sake of full transparency, we figured we'd show you these numbers in case they could be helpful for budgeting purposes. Looking at the planning phase, in addition to commission requests for on-the-ground restoration work, we will be making match funding requests for the planning and design work of the large-scale Chase Street and Marshalltown Marsh Complex projects. Again, these figures are projecting out annual funding requests to help with the budget process. As I mentioned in the previous slide, TWI was recently awarded a NCRIF grant to complete final engineering design and permitting for the Chase Street Complex project. Since being awarded this federal grant, we've secured additional match dollars through fundraising efforts. However, we still don't have enough match funding to complete this work, which is a crucial step for moving forward with project implementation. Today, we are requesting $190,500 from the Basin Commission to support this final phase of planning work. This engineering and design process will happen for the remainder of 2026 and all of 2027. So if awarded, these funds will be spent over the course of the next 16 months. And this is summarized in the above table and in the table provided in your pack, in the document I shared with you. This amount will make up 16% of the entire project budget for this phase of work. And I'll hand it off to Craig to
Get a quick update on the Lake County Parks and Recreation crew. We right now have 2 people on the crew. Our crew leader, Emily, is on maternity leave, so she'll be back by the end of the month. So we'll be closer to getting back to our full-size crew. We have another employee that we'll be hiring, so we'll get back to a 4-person crew, which is beneficial for us. The crew is still based at Lake Etta County Park, which is very useful for the crew, getting to the Black Oak unit and all the other units that they're working in, from the Heron Rookery to MLK to Grant Street Marsh. So the ease of access from there works really well. With that, we want to just mention some, and as far as the ongoing support, the $469,000 that was awarded back in the fall for this project, I would say up to this point, we've probably drawn down that by about half. We've got another reimbursement request coming in the next couple weeks. I think we're getting that ready. And then with that, we just have some discussion points with the commission, and you'll see them mentioned right here. So figure we could go through these and see if there's any questions or comments on that. So.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, and so just to reiterate here, we are on track to spend down the funding that we received last fall by the end of 2026. Then the 190,500 that TWI is requesting to support the planning phase at Chase Street, that's in addition to the funding that we've already received. That funding would be spent between the time we receive it until the end of 2027. But not to complicate things, but we want to find a cadence that works for the commission to make ongoing requests. The restoration phase isn't going to stop, right? That's an ongoing process. And so somehow we need to figure out a way to, hit the right number with the commission to support that work year over year. We also, are moving into much more complicated aspects of the work. Completing the planning phases will, need a little bit more support. When we get to implementation phase, we're thinking really big ticket items, really big federal funding pots, and so on. And so we are curious from the commission, are there any questions about Chase Street or Marshalltown Marsh and the planning phases? Any concerns? Is there any guidance from the commission on what kind of funding we should be requesting?
Mr. Chairman, I have several.
Go ahead, Mr. Brodnick.
Okay.
I'll ask. I don't.
Okay, so first of all, Victoria and team, thank you for the presentation. To address the associate candidate request, I would request that you or suggest that you reach out to Councilwoman Lori Lori Latham, Latham, City of Gary. She has some deep relationships with I think it's called Blackwater Professionals, and you might find some candidates there. With respect to the well, let me just address the question you asked, and I think the chairman will probably follow up on it. We probably will take it under advisement. I can see a number of different ways to consider your longer term request now. We can make it a separate project, and we'll probably take it under advisement at our next executive session or something to that effect. But I did have some questions specific to the presentation. Back from the beginning, you said your founder said that this is the largest urban wetlands restoration in American history. If you have sources or any background information supporting that, that would be great. If you could just send it to the office, to the commission's office. I'm going to try to make this quick, so I won't, try to go back and forth with you. Also, Victoria, I see your PhD, and you said you guys believe that what's good for the birds is good for everything else. Are there any downsides to things like that? And the only reason, well, one of the reasons I make that query is I work for a chemical company that was also a long time ago that had done some great restoration work in South Louisiana. And with that work came migratory birds back and some other species, and it then limited our company from actually performing some of the operations that we need to perform for certain periods of time because of nesting seasons. Do you anticipate or any issues like that? Because this is a huge area.
Yes, thank you very much for those questions. I would absolutely take you up on your recommendation to contact Lori Latham for candidate recommendations. The visionary quote that Paul Watts put together, he did have references for that. They're not published, PhD, I understand publishing, they're not published and scientifically reviewed, but I think they could be if we went down that road. And so I will make sure to share out those references with the commission. And then when it comes to wildlife interrupting construction or other needed work, because we're operating within the levee system, I think we're going to be all right. I think the where it's going to make the biggest headache for us is when we're actually contracting out to do the implementation work within the wetland systems themselves.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I'd just like to also
I had
add
two
to
others.
that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Peter.
I would just also like to add that, as we receive some of these larger federal grants, we are required to sort of, follow certain like federal environmental regulations in considering
I would
like
hope so,
habitat
is what you guys
disturbance
do.
for nesting birds and for bats and other protected species as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. And then I had two other questions, Mr. Chairman. I'll make them quick. Chase Street, Peter, you mentioned the remeandering through there. The question I had, and I don't know if you've already talked to Dan about this, is that looks like you're going to be changing the route of the river, and obviously we've done a lot of work through there. So I was just wondering if you've considered in the cost of that or complications or challenges working with us and our easement. And I mean, we don't want you to destroy anything that we've created. We understand you're trying to make it better. And then, and I'll just throw both of these out there at the same time so you respond. The last question I have is you both mentioned a 4 to 8 year timeline. I was just wondering if there are any potential challenges on the outside end of that timeline, 8 years. Like, does that still keep work going at a steady enough pace to where you don't have any negative consequences of delays?
Yeah, great question. So to answer your first question, in looking at the preferred remeander option for the river realignment and the Chase Street project, we did have our engineers in the 60% design look at, any sort of potential conflict that would have with existing utilities and core infrastructure on site. They think that it's feasible. And I will also add that in the 100% engineering design, we're also including a certain phase of that project that will involve what's called a fatal flaw analysis, in which the hired firm will take a closer look at any sort of conflict that would essentially, stop the project in its tracks. So we really want to get answers to those crucial questions before we continue on in this design process. But yeah, absolutely, we'll be looking into all of that.
Would the meandering also make it more difficult, for us to get access to certain areas?
Access is definitely a consideration, even in the 60% design. I know the firm we hired recommended that instead of doing like an open cut, that culverts through a new culvert through Chase Street would actually be better for access, or like allowing equipment to get across that area if there were any sort of like potential log jams or things like that. So yeah, certainly access and maintenance is something that we're considering in this design process as well.
The $18 million, did that include this re-meandering in this river?
It does, but that number could drop if that culvert replacement is completed. The price tag for that culvert replacement is included in that $18 million estimate. And so there are other circumstances that may arise along the way that will adjust that, that final number. But yes, to your question, it does include the river remeander.
I piggyback on Commissioner Broadneck's assessment. How is this going to affect the existing design and what we've done already? And is it going to impede what we've already accomplished? I think that's a concern.
And that is a very good question. And nothing that we are proposing would jeopardize the integrity of the levee system. Everything that we're proposing would enhance the levee system. And so that when we get to the 100% design and permitting process, we will also do a fatal flaw analysis, and that will be a part of what we are considering. And we are very open to having a working session with the commission, bringing our engineering firms together with you guys to dig into the nitty-gritty issues at your convenience. We will drop everything with you if that is of interest. And we are also always very interested in taking you out on site. We were just out there with Dan at Chase Street a few weeks ago, kind of talking through this process and looking at where the culvert would go under Chase Street. And sometimes just getting your eyes on the site helps to, increase understanding and perception. So invitation is open.
I have a couple questions. First of all, I compliment you on a fantastic presentation, and it's good to see the evidence between Lake County Parks working with the Audubon Society and with us. That's a great idea. A couple of questions is that are you have any knowledge of any projects like this in the country? And if you do, what has it done for the community? Did it upgrade the community as property values? Did the educational community get in there and bring children to schools for the environment, and all those things that the public can get a benefit from? Because this is truly a massive project. When you said it's the largest in the country, I mean, that would put this Lake County on the map of the country. So I'm very excited about it, and I'd like to know if you can answer some of those questions.
Absolutely, Commissioner Castellanos, and thank you for those questions. I had a wonderful conversation with a firm called Port Urbanism. They are urban park master planners with expertise in wetland restoration, and they walked me through several projects that they've done across the country that are doing just that, just not at the same scale that we're doing it. And so the idea that we have is to, with this new funding, to build in matching requests from our community foundations to support a firm like Port Urbanism to do that urban park master planning. And when you see some of the work that they've done, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, you talk about sculpture gardens, beautiful bridges and beautiful walkways and bike paths. And the way that they get there is that they have very deep and intentional community engagement throughout the process. So the city would be at the table, the commission is always invited to the table, and we'll be working with our Wild Indigo associate, hopefully from City of Gary, and all of our community members to figure out what is it that Hatcher Park could be. And how is it going to connect into what's happening in the wetland system? How is that going to connect into Gary Elevated or the Marquette Greenway or Blueway Trail? We want it all integrated and seamless, and also spotlighting that we have an existing levee trail. You can go 10 miles on this river on your bike. And, we were just out at Highland Heron Rookery doing a plug planting event with some volunteers, the Highland Sustainability Group. And towards the end, there is this really strong man riding his very big bike on the levee. And he had to stop because our trucks were on the path and we're doing the plug planting. We have plants out. And I said, I'm very sorry that we're impeding your way. And he's like, well, what's going on here? And so I got to start to talk to him about that. And he's like, man, I love riding this trail. It's really exciting to think about all of the things that you're bringing that's going to enhance that for me. So people are noticing what we're doing, and it is truly exciting.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan, did they submit an application?
No, this is,
Okay.
they didn't even tell me how much they're asking for it, so.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that is because I know you said you were requesting
For the next meeting.
preferably an approval for next month. But okay, all right.
And that's a question, is I noticed that when other folks are making requests to the commission, they're filling out an application form from you guys. Is that what you want us to do? Because whatever works best for you is what we are going to do. And also, what time?
They don't do an application.
Okay.
Right.
They just do stuff like this.
Is this to meet a deadline for another application?
Thank you, Commissioner Orsburn. Yes, so the request that we're making today is part of the matching funds for the NCRIF grant that TWI received at the end of last year. It's currently underway. So the RFP for contractors to do that final permitting and design is already out. We're going to be soliciting bids. And in order to implement that aspect of the project, we need the matching funds to complete that full budget picture.
One last question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The fatal flaw analysis that you talked about, so it sounds like this is typically done in the final stage of engineering, like most engineering stages are like 3 stages, 30, 60, 90, or third. Is there any way that is this fatal flaw analysis earlier in this final stage of engineering or later? Because you're asking
The
for
fatal
some
flaw
money.
analysis is essentially happening like midway through this engineering and design process. So as I mentioned, we just completed 60% design, and we will be proceeding with the final design and permitting. Fatal flaw analysis is going to be the first thing we have the firm do.
That's the question. Okay,
We're
right.
proceeding with the
To
remainder.
get from
of the
60 to
design
100, you don't want to do all the way to 90 and then do a fatal flaw analysis and say,
Right.
oh,
That's
geez,
correct.
none of this works. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Regarding Marshalltown master plan. I saw on your graphic it's a 2-year process. So that's exciting, Victoria, and thank you for your presentation, all you. It's great. Like the passion. But in that 2-year period, can you just give an overview? There's a lot of community engagements, I would imagine.
Yeah.
How many planning sessions are you typically going to have?
So Commissioner Castellanos knows this, but I'm very impatient. And so in addition to applying for funding, we've been actively working with the city of Gary to activate the site and do whatever we can in the meantime. Because building a relationship doesn't start when you get funding. And it doesn't stop when the funding ends. Building a meaningful, real, genuine relationship means that you're engaged throughout long term. And so building those relationships with the city, as soon as they brought me on board at Audubon, I was like, Brenda, I need to talk to Brenda Scott Henry, got connected with all the right people. We were trying to figure out how to take care of some burn piles, and there was no opportunity to do burning. And Brenda says, well, if you connect with the city on our community cleanup event, we'll bring out the city mulcher and we can take care of all of this. We took advantage of that opportunity to vision out with the city, to talk about everything that we're up to, get some real excitement. Reagan Hatcher was out. She's thrilled about this. We're standing there at Hatcher Park looking at the pool, and like the mayor's office was there, parks, public works, sanitary, sustainability. We're all standing around this pool and they're like, we can rehab this. We can do this. So, I mean, the vision, they understand the vision, the ambition, and what we're trying to achieve. And so, that was just one moment where we had volunteers come out, the city come out. We had this big cleanup event. We took care of a problem in a creative way that worked for the city. And we're going to keep doing more. The city right now has an urban forestry fellow, and I've connected with him right away. We're going to plant some trees at Hatcher Park and hopefully at Peppermint Playground and Ironwood Park. And we'll do that with community and use that as another opportunity for site beautification, relationship building, community engagement. Once we get the funding, once we have our wild indigo person in place, that process will ramp up significantly. It won't be this, me doing conservation management and all the community engagement. We'll have someone dedicated to that specifically, and it will be happening consistently over time. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I got one last question. Have you been before the Lake County Council and the commissioners yet with this proposal? The Lake County Council and commissioners of Lake County.
No, we have not.
I think they would love to hear this.
Okay.
Okay.
May I reach out to you to find a way to connect with them?
Can you go back to the slide where you mentioned Oxbow on Chase Street area and just talk about or just public edification? What does that entail?
Yeah, so currently, the way the river runs, it goes from west to east. There's a historic river channel here on the west side of the Chase Street complex. And at this point, it joins this excavated incised channel that essentially bypasses the historic river channel as that water exits the site. So in our proposal, and that happened like over 100 years ago, based on aerial imagery and things that we can guess. Based on the design of the engineer that we hired for 60% design, they propose installing an additional culvert under Chase Street and under this abandoned street over here. I believe it's Taft Street. And in so doing, that would realign the river with its historic channel on the north side of the site. As I mentioned, this will improve conveyance because what will happen is during base flow conditions, the river will follow this meandering channel on the north side of the site. And then during like 2-year flood events, as the water rises, it will go over this ditch plug here on the original incised channel and re-engage it. So essentially during flood events, you'll get conveyance of water from the west side to the east side through both channels.
Unless nature fills it in.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. We really
I
appreciate
just
it.
have one more
Okay, go ahead.
thing to say for the last slide. Jumping around here. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your generous support of this work. Part of this work will be to better communicate the value of these projects to local communities. And we'd not only like to celebrate the milestones and successes of the collaborative, but also elevate the Basin Commission as an effective resource management agency. We recognize that while your purview is mainly flood control, the Basin Commission manages some of the largest swaths of contiguous protected green space in Northwest Indiana. And I think the image of your seal, does a great job of portraying just that. A great blue heron among a tuft of native plants set in front of a wide meandering river, symbols of the ecological potential of this river corridor. So thank you.
You very good.
Thank you.